Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Art of Signing and Sealing, the Differences Between Digital Signing and Digital Certifying PDFs. This webinar is brought to you by Applied Software. My name is Diana Ramirez, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today. We'll begin with a quick intro video on how to get the most out of this webinar and interact with us today. All right, here we go.
Hi, and welcome to this Applied Software webinar. We're glad you could join us today. Get more out of the webinar by clicking on the icons at the bottom of your screen. You can resize these. This button leads to resources. This button adjusts the volume. Just don't push this one. I'm watching you. Be sure to find Applied Software on social media and on our website, asti.com, where we'll empower you to discover what's possible. You can also find a complete schedule of upcoming events, on-demand webinars, and training on our calendar at asti.com/calendar. This is being recorded for your convenience. You'll be receiving an email with the recording link for future reference. And make sure to stick around. We'll answer questions at the end. See you there.
As the video mentioned, you can find a schedule of upcoming events, webinars, and training on our calendar at asti.com/calendar. So make sure to check that out. I am pleased to introduce our speaker today, Rick Kremer, who is a Bluebeam certified instructor at Applied Software with years of experience in the field. Thank you, Rick, and all of you for joining us today. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and plug them in the chat box. We will have time to answer them at the end. Take it away, Rick.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. How's everyone doing today? Happy Cinco de Mayo, by the way, Diana.
Thank you. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to be looking at the differences between digitally signing a PDF and also certifying a document. So today, we're going to be looking at the following outline of topics. First, we're going to take a look at the differences explained between the two, and I'm also going to talk to you about how to work with graphic signatures. I'll then show you how to add a signature field to your documents, create a digital ID, and how to sign your documents. Then we'll go to the next level, showing you how to certify a document and the pros and cons of how to certify a document, and all the different methods to make sure that you have a certified document. Then lastly, we'll look at adding an additional layer of security on your PDFs. Now, this is above and beyond signing and sealing documents. This is in case you really want to lock down your PDFs. Then, lastly, we'll take a look at how to work with third-party commercial applications like DocuSign and other similar formats. So, without further ado, let's jump right to it. All right, here goes. And in 3, 2, 1. There we go. Diana, do you happen to see my Bluebeam review application here showing graphic stamp?
Yes, Rick, I can see it.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. Let's take a look at the differences between all three different formats and how to use them, how to create them, and the pros and cons of all. First, let's take a look at the first one right here called the graphic stamp. A lot of people can use just a regular stamp as shown here. Now, this gives you the ability to go through and place a graphic signature, kind of like this one right over here. Now, this is not certifying nor signing digitally a document. This is literally applying your John Hancock to a drawing, and I'll show you how to do that. Next, we're going to take it to the next level and show you how to sign a document. Over here, as you see here under Tools and Signature, you have the ability to sign a document. And we'll take a look at the differences between signing. And then last, we're going to take a look at how to certify a document. So we're going to take a look at all three. First, let's start by taking a look at the graphic signature. Over here, I have a sample drawing, or in this case, an invoice that I need to apply a signature. Now, a lot of times, different departments will require different levels of signatures. A digital signature, a signed document, or a certified document. I want to show you how we can start to insert a graphic signature, and this can be found under Tools, Stamp. When you apply a stamp, the stamp is nothing more than kind of like a rubber stamp, as you can see here in the list of previews of stamps that are included in Bluebeam PDFs. What I want to show you is I want to show you how we can start to go through and create our own signature so we can have our own signed signature. Now, I've gone ahead and brought in a signature here into Photoshop. Over here, let me kind of walk you through the process in creating your own signature so that it'll look nice on a set of documents. In this case, I have a signature file over here, my John Hancock. Over here, this is just a sample file that I found online, but you can see if you take an image and just put it on a piece of paper and scan it, you'll have a white background. If I were to bring this in as is, it's going to obscure all the information underneath. Using an application like Photoshop, I'm able to take that drawing, in that file I should say, and make it a PNG. By creating a PNG file, as you can see here, the image itself is transparent, leaving just the signature, so we can start to apply the signature. I'm going to show you how we're going to take the signature file over here and apply it as a graphic signature. And then lastly, also then start to look at how to incorporate a seal. All right. Let's go through and see how to bring this all together, starting with the graphic signature. Over here, I'll go to Tools, Stamp, and I'm going to go through and create a new stamp. Again, this is just a graphic stamp. Let's go over here and just call it Graphic Signature. G-R-A-P, Graphic Clear Signature. And we'll approximate the size. Again, this is the true size of the document of what you're signing. You might want to take out a little ruler to see what size you want. In this case, I know that it's 2 inches by 1 inches using a blank document. I'll go ahead and hit OK. This right here gives us the ability to now go through and place our signature. I'm going to go through and add an image file. When I add an image file, I'm going to go through and take a look at the signatures. And I'm going to take a look at the clear signature that I created right here. I'll hit open and simply left click and place it. And there it is. Now, at this point, I can start to go through and minimize kind of the area that the stamp is going to occupy. You'll notice the icon over here shows that it's a stamp. I'm simply going to go over here and click Save. When I hit Save, this saves it directly to the app data location within the computer. My recommendation is to also go through and do a Save As. So you can save it over here as a PDF somewhere outside of Bluebeam. So you can use it over and over again, just in case you need to reinstall the application. I'll go ahead and add it over here to my signatures and hit Save. At this point, I can go ahead and close this. Back to over here and including the graphic stamp. Now, all I need to do to install it is go over here to Tools, Stamp, and I should see my clear stamp right here. I'll simply click on it, and you'll notice the stamp icon, and I'll go ahead and click to place it. And there it is. As you can see, I can also resize that stamp. And because it's transparent, I can place it anywhere. I can also go through and even give it a slight angle. And there it is. Yeah, maybe a slight angle is no good. So there's my signature. So this is just a graphic signature, which some companies will accept. Let's take it to the next level over here and show how to use the signed document certification, the signed option over here using Bluebeam Review. In this case, the difference is in a signed document, this is more of a digital signature, not a graphic signature that's more universally accepted between permitting departments. Over here, what we're going to do is first take a look at Tools, Signature, and select Sign Document. Now, when we do that, it's going to prompt us to place a location of where we want to put our signature. I'm going to left click and drag an area where I want this to be. Once I do that, this field is going to pop up and ask me for a digital ID. Let's talk about digital IDs for a moment. A digital ID gives the computer gives the PDF the ability to make sure that this person, in this case you, have a certification that is a digital ID that meets the format of PKCS number 12. This is a universal format known by most companies and accepted by most permitting companies as well. Over here, you can browse for existing digital IDs, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to create our own digital ID. Now, the third option is to create a digital ID in the Windows Certificate Store. This is a paid application. In this case, what we're going to do is create a digital ID which is stored locally on our own computer. Let's go through and create one now. Over here under the identity, we'll start to fill this out. I'm going to put in my name, Rick Kremer. Organization unit if necessary, if there's a department I'm working for. Over here is the name of the company, and I'm going to go ahead and put in Applied Software. I'll put in my email address, and that's bluebeam@asti.com. I'll leave everything else the same. The key algorithm I typically leave a 1024-bit RSA. This is the industry standard for keys. Next, I'm going to go through and I'm going to just put something in here, and you're going to want to make sure to put in your password. Now, something to keep in mind, I highly recommend write down your password. This password is going to keep others from utilizing your digital ID. And by the way, if you lose your password, there's no way of retrieving your password. You just have to delete your certification key that's stored on your computer. It can be found over here under App Data, Roaming, Bluebeam Software, Review, 20, and your username. Again, if you forget your password, the only way to clear it is by deleting it altogether. And you have to do that through your File Explorer. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and put in my password, confirming my password twice. This key is now going to be stored on my computer. Oops, 5 characters. I think you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Diana, no copying my password. All right, let's go ahead and see if that accepts it. Now, over here, I now have my digital ID. When I have my digital ID can be used for several different things. That digital ID can be used for a digital signature, and that's what we're doing now. And then in our next step, we're going to use that same digital ID to certify the document. The same digital ID can be used for both. Now, in a digital signature, you have the ability to go through and place options over here to show if you are reviewing the document, if you're the author of the document. In this case, I just want to show that I've reviewed the document. I'm going to leave everything else blank. You'll notice over here is my digital signature. My digital signature will actually show up on the drawing or the file that I'm creating. This will show me a preview of exactly what that is. By the way, all the information that shows here on the right-hand side can be customized. You'll notice it has a lot of information, some of which I might not want to need. Over here, what I can simply do is click on Edit. When I click on Edit, I now have the ability to go through and show exactly what I want on my digital ID. You'll notice over here, by the way, these are built in, and I don't need, for example, distinguished name. Just name will do. I don't need location. Reason, I'll go ahead and leave that. My contact info, and of course, I definitely need today's date. Next, I'll go ahead and simply hit OK. When I do that, you'll notice that it updates with the information over here of my signature name and also the name that I've given it using standard text. In just a little bit, we'll see how we can also manage this to not just have our name over here, but we can also include a graphic like our signature or even possibly a wet seal. First, let's see how to place this digital signature, this digital ID. I'll simply hit OK. Now, this is going to prompt me immediately to sign and seal, not sign and seal, but sign this drawing and then save it as a new file. I'm going to go over here and give it a new name, and this gives me the ability to have the original document and then the one that's signed. And I'm going to say RK signed. ID. I'll go ahead and hit OK and save it. You'll notice it now gives me this digital signature. This ID now indicates that the signature is valid. When using this ID and I email this to anyone in the world, they'll be able to see that this has been completely certified. The other thing that we can do to validate the certification is to come over here under Signatures. If you don't see it, simply right-click in an empty area and click Show and look for signatures. Now, what we're looking at over here is the identity over here showing that the green icon shows that it's been signed. I'm going to go ahead and close this and then go back and open it up again. I'll show you exactly what happens when you open up a PDF that has been digitally signed. Over here, I'm going to go to File, Open Recent, and I'm going to look for the file that has my digital ID. Now, when I do this, I'll see immediately that I have my digital ID over here. You might be wondering, over here, if I start to go through, I can verify that the signature is valid. By the way, when sending this to others, they'll also have the ability to see this digital signature. But because the digital ID is stored locally on my computer, I also need to make sure with this type of verification of digital IDs, I also need to make sure to email them the certification. If I trust the other company, maybe it's another engineering company that I'm working with, I want to make sure that they have my digital certification. This is an ID that lets them know that this is indeed me. What I can do is I'll go to Tools, Signature, and I'll look at my digital ID. When I go to digital ID, I can select my digital ID, and this again is a certification that's stored locally on my computer. If I share this with others, any other company that wants to verify my digital signature, my digital ID, I need to export this certification. When I click on Export, over here, it'll give me a new file type. This file type, that's .cer, is the certification key for this application, for this PDF. So if you send the PDF to a permitting department and they require your digital ID, make sure to include the .cer file along with your PDF. Without it, this will not be valid. Again, make sure to email the CER. The reason being is that Bluebeam stores these signature files inside your computer. And now I've gone ahead and saved it. If you were to send this to someone else that's using Bluebeam and they need to import your certification, all they have to do is go back to Tools, Signature, and go to Trusted Identities. These are all the people that we trust, or the certifications that we trust. When I click Certified Identities, it shows me all the certification identities, which are just me. Had I received, let's say, one from Diana, and she had certified a document, she would send me the PDF as well as the .cer file. Once I receive that CER file, I simply click here at this plus sign and then navigate to wherever that CER file. I'm not going to bring my same one in, but you get the idea. If you have another person that you're bringing in their certification signature, all I have to do is select it and click Open. By the way, this certification is a universal format. So if you have third-party applications, they'll also provide you with a .cer. That way you can interact with other third-party applications that provide you certification keys. And it'll add it to Trusted Identities. Now we have the ability to go through. By the way, you'll notice that this does say that signature is valid. By the way, if we start to go through and take a look at our tools, you'll notice that our tools are able to be continually used. You might be wondering, why over here is this digitally signed and green? Well, over here in Bluebeam, we have the ability to go through and show different levels of signatures. Now, in the support area of support.bluebeam.com, if you go over here to validating digital signed documents, there'll be some keys. You'll notice the different colors for the certifications. The green one means that it's been trusted. Then the document has not been changed, and the valid this is a valid signature. You'll notice it goes into different levels, including all the way the one that says the certification is invalid and the document's been altered. There are some things that you can do to still continue to work on the document. But let me show you what happens if we try to manipulate this image, how we can see that the certification has no longer been valid. It's simple. If someone were to receive this file, and let's say they wanted to go through and adjust some of the prices over here, all they would have to do is click Edit, PDF Content, and edit the text. With a digitally signed ID, you have the ability to still manipulate the drawing itself. So when I click Select Text, I'm going to come over here and, for example, change the unit cost by simply clicking in here and changing it to 40. Let's see. Hold on a minute. Edit, PDF Content, select text. I need to run OCR. Let's go over here, run OCR. Over here, I'll say that this is a text document. I'll click Detect Vertical Text. Add the current file. And it says I can't do that. That's all right, because it's been certified. So what happens is, because this is certified, I can't make some modifications. Let's go through over here and let's add some information. I'm going to add, for example, a text box. When I do that, notice what happens when I add that information. If I edit the text or do anything to the image itself, you'll notice that it changes over here. It now says the signature is not verified. When I go through, I can see the authority who created it, but now it's no longer verified. If I go back into my website over here, I can see that this is no longer valid and that it has been updated in some method. So keep in mind, when you go through on a PDF, you can start to begin to manipulate it. And that's why we'll talk about increasing PDF security at the very end, locking it down using digital signatures. Over here, if I wanted to go through and make some modifications to it, you'll notice I was unable to go through and use OCR. If I need to, all I have to do is simply click over here. Oops. And it's no longer valid, actually, so I don't have to worry about it because it's no longer valid. Let me go through and show you the next level of certification using not a digital ID, but to certify the document. Again, when I go through and use over here the digital ID, the signing the document allows others to potentially manipulate or add information to this. In comparison, if we wanted to go through and certify the document, I'm going to go over here to the next level of certifying the document. Now, the main difference between signing and certifying the document is when you certify the document, you will not have information over here in some type of seal. So what I typically will do is I'll include my digital ID and then certify the document. When I certify the document, you'll see over here a new category for certification that will allow me to go through and lock down the document. So first, let's add a digital ID. What I'm going to do in this certification is add my digital ID, which is a visual connection to the PDF so that everyone can see that it's been digitally signed, but then I'm going to certify it, thus preventing any changes. Let's first go back over here to signature and first sign the document. I'll go ahead and find the area in which I want to sign, and I'm going to place my digital signature. When I place my digital signature, it's going to ask me to put in my same password. I'll log in, and I'll go ahead and place it. This time, instead of having it just have regular text over here, let's go ahead and add my signature itself, my graphic signature. When I click Edit, this gives me the ability to take a look at the way my digital ID will graphically show up. In this case, instead of name, right here, what I can do is select File. This gives me the opportunity to bring in a seal or a signature. I'll select the Browse button, and over here, what I'm simply going to do is bring in that clear signature and hit Open. And there it is. So there's my signature, and you can see it overrides this information right on top. By the way, you can include or not include the logo from Bluebeam. This is locked into the application. The Bluebeam logo cannot be swapped out. This information now will have my graphic signature with the digital ID. I'll go ahead and hit OK. I'll say I've reviewed the document. I'm approving the document to change it up a little, and then I'll go ahead and hit OK. And this is going to be signed ID 2. I'll go ahead and hit Save. Now, I have a graphic representation of my digital ID, but let's take it to the next level, certifying a document. Now, certifying a document gives me the ability to visually have my digital ID show up. The certification, which will show up over here in just a minute, will then give us the ability to lock down the document completely. Let's see how that works. I'm going to go to Tools, Signature, and I'm going to go back and sign the document. First, let me clear the signature. I'll select it, and this time I'm going to do a document certification. Clearing the signature then gives me the ability to change it from a digital signature to a digital certification, including my digital ID. Now this time I have 3 different options. The first one is no changes are allowed whatsoever. When I do this, this means the document is locked completely. No one can go through and make any changes. Therefore, you'll see in just a moment when I do no changes allowed, my markups ability will be grayed out. I can't add or do anything. If for whatever reason there's a second signature, I might want to add the ability to have the second user fill in any forms or add their own digital signature. The last is I can include markups, give the other person the ability to fill in the forms, and also add their own digital signatures. For the most part, the first 2 are the ones that I typically use. Either I'm going to lock it down if I'm the only one that's going to sign it, thus allowing no one to make any changes, or if I'm sending it to my engineer and I want the engineer to sign something as well after they receive my certification, then I'll allow them to add their digital signature. By the way, you can only have 1 certification on the PDF, but you can have multiple digital signatures. Over here, I'm going to say no changes allowed. And I'm going to change the reason over here to say I agree to the terms defined in placement of the signature of this document. Just changing it up even a little bit more. Again, creating this is not going to allow any changes, creating a certified document. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Over here, I'll go ahead and place this as certified. Oops. Certified. I'll go ahead and hit. Now, over here, I want you to take a notice. Under the signatures area, you'll see that the document is not only signed, it's also certified. Had I chosen the other option where I can allow other signatures, then I will see the list of other people's signatures listed below. I can forward this on had I chosen that option. Now, remember, this one I locked down completely. So even if I were to send this to someone, including myself at this point, if I go to Tools, Markup, you'll notice it's all grayed out. Locking the document down, not allowing any changes, and a certified PDF gives you this ability. A lot of companies will prefer this type of method. Again, keep in mind when sending this to someone, you need to go through and send them your digital ID. Make sure to send that certification. All right, let's see what happens when we start to go through and close this and open it back up. When we go to Open Recent, I can see that there's my signature. Let's say I've opened this up and I need to make some changes to this. Well, including myself, I can't go through and mark it up. What I can do is I can select this, right-click, and clear the certificate. Clearing the certificate removes my digital ID, then gives me the ability to go through and add my own markups again. And I can start to add markups as necessary. Remember, removing the digital ID will remove the digital ID, signature, and the certification in one fell swoop. So be very careful when clearing out your signature. I'm going to go ahead and close this file. I'll say do not save. Next, let's talk about adding an additional level of security. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this drawing over here, but I don't want someone to have the ability to go through and add information to it. This is looking at the methodology of going through and signing a document. Not certifying, but signing a document. In signing a document, you do not have the ability to lock it down. But what you can do under document properties, you have the ability to go through and add an additional level of security on any PDF. By the way, adding security to a PDF does not mean you have to use a digital ID or certify the document. You can do this to any ordinary PDF. By adding a level of security, you can restrict printing, changing, anything of that nature. You'll notice over here, this is all restricted. Let's go through. To change the permissions on a PDF, we have to simply click Change Permissions. Now, because this one's already signed, let's go through and just add just a new simple open drawing. I'm going to go over here and open up just a simple PDF. And I'll go over here to my original file. Let me go over here to Archived. I'll go to another document. In this case, I'm going to open up this invoice. And over here on this new drawing, let's say I wanted to go through and make sure that no one saves any changes. I'll use, for example, this time my clear signature, add the signature, but I also want to make sure that no one goes through and makes any changes to it without actually using any of the digital ID or certification. I'll go over here to Document, go to Security, and you'll notice that everything is allowed. I'll go ahead and click on Change Permission. On this particular drawing, I can require a password. Now again, this is an additional layer of security on a drawing. I can go ahead and put in a password. I'll verify the password. And also require it if I want anyone to be able to go through and print, copy, or edit the document. I'll have to include can't have the same one. And I won't allow printing. I'll go ahead and save it. When I go back and try to open it, immediately comes up with a password. Now, even within Windows, I need to go through and make sure to include that password. If I were to take a look at that drawing through my File Explorer, I wouldn't even be able to see a preview. I'll go ahead and put in the password. When I put in the password, now I'm able to work on it, and I can start to go through and mark it up. You'll notice, though, because I also included an additional layer, not allowing anyone to print it, my print icon is even grayed out. If I go over here and try to print, you'll notice that it's grayed out. I have to go through and clear that out as well. So you can see creating a secure PDF gives you the ability to add a third layer of security. Creating stuff that's password protected gives you that additional layer of security. Next, let's talk about third-party applications like DocuSign. Now, something to keep in mind, the difference between DocuSign and other parties, third-party commercial applications, is Bluebeam goes through and stores your signatures locally. Remember that trusted ID? That certification is located on your own C drive. Third-party applications like DocuSign allow you to go through and create a digital certification key that lives on the web. It's on a public access. When you go through and start to take a look at digital IDs, you have the ability to go through and use something like this. For example, IdenTrust. IdenTrust, similar to DocuSign, gives you the ability to create a certification key. The difference between using third-party applications like these are, first and foremost, you have to pay for them. Usually, they're not instant. Also, you'll notice that you have to apply for verification. This online process might take a couple days, so don't expect something like IdenTrust or DocuSign to work immediately. You have to fill out the forms. In this case, IdenTrust or DocuSign will send a certification. If you're using DocuSign, DocuSign works hand in hand with Bluebeam, but you must use the DocuSign signature appliance. This is an additional small application that runs with DocuSign. Again, if you're using DocuSign, make sure to download the DocuSign signature appliance. Once you log into that, you can utilize your DocuSign signature in your Bluebeam PDF. IdenTrust will do the same thing. In this case, after applying for IdenTrust and paying them a monthly or yearly due of $54, I'll have the ability to go through and receive a certification key. That certification key might arrive on a USB drive or electronically. Make sure to have that handy and installed on your computer so you can use it through Bluebeam PDFs. Well, that's all that I had for today. Let's see if we have any questions from the audience.
All right, thank you, Rick, for taking us through the art of signing and sealing, the differences between digital signing and digital certifying PDFs. I do want to open up. I do see that we have some questions here, but if you want, please feel free to drop off some questions in the Q&A. Like that, we'll be able to answer any questions you have. Alrighty, I have a question here from Nick. He says, we have a document that requires signatures from multiple entities. Sometimes after someone has signed a document, it will be locked up from others being able to sign it. It sounds like we need to ask people to not certify, but to only digitally sign it. Is this correct?
That, Nick, you nailed it. Absolutely. So you have the last person in line to certify the document, have everyone place their digital ID, and then go through, and the last person typically will certify the document, or whoever's certifying the document. Remember when I went through under certification, there was the ability to allow them to go through and add additional signatures. That's what you want them to do, is place that additional ability to add additional signatures after they've certified it. So either they allow the certification, allow additional signatures after it's certified, or just ask them to place a digital ID on their document and pass it forward. And then you put your digital ID, and then the last person in line digitally certifies it. Or again, at the very beginning, allows others to apply their digital ID to a document. Again, folks, if you have questions like that and it doesn't work for whatever reason, please feel free to reach out to us at bluebeam@asti.com. Great question, Nick.
Yeah, great question. I have another one here from John. He's asking, is there any way to maintain encrypted PDF to stop anyone from modifying and still allow the building department to stamp the PDF as permitted? And he's asking this because he said he submitted electronically an electronically signed and encrypted drawing to the building department. They didn't want it encrypted because they wanted to add their approval stamp to the PDF.
Right. So you don't want to encrypt it. That's you want to go through and place your digital ID. When placing a digital ID, again, that gives them the ability to see that you've gone through. For example, over here with a signature, over here I'm going to sign the document and I'm going to place my signature, right? that signature over here can also include, instead of your John Hancock, over here we can change that, for example, to your wet seal. So over here I have one of my signatures over here, and here's a wet seal, right? So I'll go ahead and place that. And when I do, I'll be able to go through and apply my wet seal right here. Now, my wet seal, by the way, should have the signature on it as well, part of the PDF that can be included in your Photoshop. When I place this over here, I'll be able to go through and allow others to place their signature. If I do the digital signature, most permitting departments will allow the digital signature still with the type of digital ID that I'm using with the certification, and allow them to make markups. Again, digital signatures gives the other people the ability to go through and place markups afterwards. Or if they require what's called a digital certification, make sure to go through and put markups as the option. So make sure to ask your permitting department if they want a digital signature or a digital certification. If they want a certification, you have to click markups, allowing them to use Bluebeam to include their own markups and digital signatures. So this will include your signature and certification. You'll be certifying the document, and then they can add their digital signatures and markups.
Thank you.
Good question.
Lisa here says, hi, great webinar. Are certified PDFs created in Bluebeam Review able to be confirmed in Adobe?
Yes. And so as I mentioned, and Lisa, that's a great question. So again, remember the certification, the certificate is actually a separate certificate that is privately owned on your C drive, Lisa. So when you send that PDF to the permitting department or to anyone, send the PDF and also send that .cer. Unless you're using a third-party commercial account like DocuSign or IdenTrust. Those two companies, the reason why you pay that yearly subscription is that they store your certification on a public domain that automatically is accessible by everyone in the World Wide Web. So that's why they charge that fee, because the certification is online. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right here, I have Tom asking, is there a cost to create a certified ID within Bluebeam Review?
No. You're ready, Tom? It's free. Utilizing the digital IDs built into Bluebeam, you have the ability to go through, and when creating those digital IDs, as I mentioned before, you can browse for an existing digital ID from a third-party application, create your own one, and your own digital ID, again, is stored privately on your C drive, or you can purchase one through the Windows Certificate Store. And the third kind of option is using, again, something like DocuSign or other applications like IdenTrust to bring in those information. Good question.
Thank you. Good question. All right, some questions are coming in here. Ben is asking, do you have a typical process for engineers sign and seals?
The typical process for engineers signing and sealing is, first you want to go through, literally take your stamp, your wet stamp, put it on a white piece of paper and scan it in. If you want, go ahead and put your actual signature right on there. When you create your stamp, you also have the ability to go through, and I didn't do that today because today wasn't about creating stamps. You have the ability, if you want to create a graphic stamp, you can have your seal have smart fields. So for example, it'll put in the date. If you're using a digital signature, using your digital ID, I typically do not include the date as a field, and I'll bring in that wet seal. I'll also, in Photoshop, bring in the actual signature as a PNG on top of the scanned wet seal. All of this information then will be filled out. Now, using engineer drawings, like a set of construction documents, typically you want to apply that to multiple pages. In that case, you want to use the Bluebeam Extreme Edition, which allows you to apply that digital ID, this actual physical stamp, on multiple pages. Remember, that's just only going to place it on one sheet. But to place it on multiple sheets, you have to do it manually if you're using the standard or CAD edition. But if you're using the Extreme edition, you have that ability to apply right over here under Batch, Sign and Seal. This gives you the ability to apply it to not only the drawings that are open, multiple pages, but you can apply that to other files that are located on your server. So hopefully that gave you enough information. Again, I know it's a lot. If you have questions, feel free to email us at bluebeam@asti.com, and I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, there's one last question here from Donna asking if I were to send a doc to someone to sign if I were to send a doc to someone to sign that does not have access to Bluebeam, will they be able to digitally sign the document?
Yes. Okay, great question. So in this case, I'm looking at this drawing over here. What I can begin to do is I placed a signature field. If I leave this empty the way it is over here, I'm going to go through and place another digital signature field. I'll click here on adding a signature. I'll go over here and not sign the document, but add a field. When I do that, you'll notice over here, it adds an area. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit escape a couple times. This is what people will see if you just leave it blank. Over here, let's say I'm part of the invoicing department, accounting, and I need to go through and create these areas for someone else to sign it. And in this case, I just create the field for the signature. I save this and send it. I email it to anyone using any application like Adobe or any third party. They'll receive this document. They can click on it, even on their iPhone or Android device, click on it and add their signature, whether it's their actual signature with their finger, or if they're using a third-party application like Bluebeam or Adobe or any other third party, they can click on it and add their own digital ID using that software. But you just add the digital field over here, the ID field, again, right over here. Adding signature field, just save it and send it. Those are some great questions, huh?
Really good questions. I have one here, another one from JJ asking if we digitally sign and certify with the option to allow others to digitally sign, can they make other markups, or does that only allow them to digitally sign?
So when you go through and you place your digital ID, okay? So again, two different things here. Over here, when we go to signatures and sign the document, this allows others to add markups. It also allows them to add their own digital ID, okay? And they can add as many markups as they want. If we certify the document, remember those are the three different options. One, we can lock it down. The other one is we can allow them to add, fill in forms and their digital ID. And the third option was to create markups. By certifying it and allowing the third option with markups, then they can start to apply markups in Bluebeam. For the most part, again, from least to most secure, the least secure is just adding the graphic signature, right? And that's just kind of what some people mistake as a graphic signature or a digital ID. This is just a graphic signature. It really doesn't mean anything other than you signed something, but there's no way to track to see if it's been modified. By utilizing the sign over here, you're able to make sure that it has maintained its validity through those icons. And again, once you sign the document, when I click right here and start to sign it, I can start to go through and I'll click to sign it. And then I'll be able to go through, there it is, and add my digital signature, again, putting in my password and using a digital signature. Again, there's no option over here. This is grayed out. And I'll go ahead and just click login, hit OK. And I'll call this take two, signed only. Click OK again. Now, because it has my digital ID over here, my signature is still valid, and I have the ability to add all the markups. Now, when I add the markups, it'll change colors over here. So that's the nice thing about the digital signature, that it's tracking that information versus just a graphic signature. So if I come back over here with markups and someone else does something to it, just adds a stamp, you'll notice that it changes. And if it turns red, that means that someone has actually not just added information, but actually changed something of the text using edit text and changing a number. So if you ever see the signature icon over here turn red, that means they've actually changed the document in some way, that it's not original. Okay.
Thank you for asking that. One more question that just came in. Does flattening command have any pros or cons with signature or certifications?
So flattening will flatten your markups, but really doesn't touch the digital signature. The certification, remember, is invisible. It's not physically here. It's actually something that shows up here. But when you flatten the document, if you wanted to, you could start to go through and flatten the document, thus not allowing anyone to make changes to the markups over here. Right now, if I were to send this to someone, they'll have this ability, plus it's no longer valid, but they can add different things. If I go through and flatten the document, you'll notice that I can't flatten it because it's been digitally signed. If I go through, I have to go back to my original drawing, and then I can start to go through and flatten and unflatten the document. Flattening is kind of like another layer of security without adding any kind of thing. It's not adding security. It's not adding a digital signature or digital ID. It's just flattening the document, which a lot of people will do so that no changes are allowed and all the markups are embedded in the PDF. That's a great question.
Great question. And we have some more coming in. Anthony's asking, does digital signature have any effect in a Bluebeam session?
Digital signatures in a session. You know, I'd have to get back to you on that one. I don't want to give you misinformation, Anthony. Go ahead and feel free to email us at bluebeam@asti.com, and I'll be able to answer that fully.
John here is asking, multi-page PDF with stamp on all sheets. Will stamps be stripped from pages when adding signature or certification?
So no. So adding a stamp to multiple pages is really independent of any of the certifications. So typically what I would do is I would apply the stamp first in order. So you have your set of construction documents, you apply your stamp on the set of construction documents or submittals and apply it to all pages, right? You can just simply place one, right click on it and apply to all pages. Then go through and add either your digital ID by signing or certifying the document. But you want to make sure to add the stamps first to all the pages.
All right, I think it looks like we've answered all the questions here in the chat box. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We do appreciate you for spending your time with us and trust it was a meaningful and impactful experience for you and your business. We look forward to seeing you in a future webinar. And again, if you do have any questions that we might not have gotten to or you think of any new ones, feel free to email us at bluebeam@asti.com. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.